I'm not 8 anymore. I think if I was 8, I probably would have loved this movie. So the new Space Jam film released on HBO Max a few days ago, and I'll be honest, I was pretty excited for it. I remember as a kid really enjoying the original Space Jam. That was about 20 years ago, so my idea of what I thought was good 20 years ago probably changed. I heard that this new Space Jam wasn't great. The early reviews were pretty bad, so I went from being excited to thinking maybe I won't watch it at all. And then I saw a lot of slander, a lot of people just ragging on this new Space Jam, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to take a look and see if it's really as bad as they say. Taking shots at Space Jam New Legacy, Space Jam 2, whatever you want to call it. I think it's a little bit of low-hanging fruit. I think there's a couple things with this new Space Jam movie. So we'll start with some of the negatives, some of the things the film could have done better. Let's get that out of the way first. The movie is 2 hours long. The original Space Jam film was 90 minutes. That's the sweet spot. The end of this film feels like they could have cut about 20 minutes. The beginning of the film feels like they could have cut about 20 minutes. I don't know what Warner Bros. Executives said, get this to 2 hours. It didn't need to be 2 hours at all. And you really feel it. There's definitely parts of this movie where you start to zone out, not necessarily because it's bad, just because not really sure why they felt the need to include everything that they did in this movie. Now, running time aside for the film, I really only think the other things you could complain about are probably all things you could levy against the original Space Jam. There is one other glaring issue with this film that, for anyone who was paying attention to the opening credits, you probably saw, and it got you a little worried. That's the fact that this movie has 6 writers, at least 6 writers credited in the opening of the film. That's a bad sign. That is a real too many cooks in the kitchen type thing. And you do feel it as you watch the movie that there were a lot of different ideas. I know Ryan Coogler was involved. He's listed as one of the writers. There's a very good chance he rewrote as much of this film as he could, because it sort of feels like someone trying to save a script that could have been or was much worse than it ended up being. I don't want to say that this whole movie is not good or, terrible, abomination, all these ridiculous superlatives that have been being thrown around. There is a lot of good here. There are a lot of fun moments, and I think when you watch a movie like this, because it's important to remember, the original Space Jam was a kid's movie, okay? A lot of adults reviewing this film as if they thought they were going to see some Oscar-worthy, LeBron James is going to become the Denzel Washington of athlete actors. I'm not really sure what you were looking for. The original Space Jam, not great. Like, if you go back and watch it today, it's not great. I thought that if you're comparing the movies to each other, if you are taking these in a vacuum and comparing the first Space Jam to this new one, probably about the same. I mean, I think the nostalgia of the first one, the way you remember it, probably makes you think it was better. But I think in comparison to this one, aside from it being a little bloated, this is probably just as good, if not maybe a little bit better. I mean, it's not an abomination. I don't know what, I know it's good for clicks, right? To exaggerate on the title of an article, and the worst movie ever made, worst film of 2021. Oh, it's awful, terrible. It's a kid's movie. This movie is made, flashy lights, colors, lots of characters and cameos that, older audience members probably will recognize, and kids will probably recognize a lot of them as well. But it's aimed at kids. It's not really for the people that saw the original, and I think maybe that's a little bit of a confusion when they were making it, is who is the movie for? Are you trying to aim it at the people from 20 years ago who are all grown up now? Are you trying to aim it for a new generation, kind of as the title would suggest? Instead, we kind of got something in between, which isn't bad, and I think maybe a few more revisions, this movie could have been a lot better, or at least, slightly better than it ended up being. But there's enough fun moments here to save it from being a really just like awful experience. Like the beginning of the film does drag, but once you get to the basketball scene, which is the whole point of watching a Space Jam movie, it picks up a lot. It is worth noting some of the positives here. Don Cheadle is fantastic. You want to talk about a guy fully committing to his insane role that he's given in this movie? He is all in, all right? Do not tell Don Cheadle that this movie is not good, because he commits so hard to his character that it's hard to not appreciate his performance in this movie. It's definitely, turned up. He's really cranking it up. I thought he was good. I thought he was really good. LeBron James, he was honestly better in Trainwreck as far as acting goes, but he wasn't awful here, okay? Definitely was not awful as far as athlete actors go. And the new animation that they used for the Looney Tunes, even though I'm a fan of the old school animation, which is in this film, okay? This is not just 3D, newer animation the whole time. It looked okay. It looked a little bit weird on some characters. I think it looked a little bit jarring at first when they transformed them from 2D to 3D, but overall, I didn't think it looked awful. I know that people can have very aggressive reactions to these things, but I don't know, it seemed okay. And I thought overall the movie was fine. I'm not 8 anymore. I think if I was 8, I probably would have loved this movie. I think there was enough fun here and enough callbacks to the original film that it made it a pretty fun time as I was watching it. And it's goofy, and it's silly, and it's really, really dumb, but that's Space Jam.